can tell her. You can tell her anything. She's a real good listener. You can tell her anything.
I think that worked. Okay. Cool. Yo, what's up? It's your girl, Father Longlegs. This is You Can Tell Me Anything, the podcast where I have comedians confess something they want to get off their chest. Special quarantine edition. You know, I don't know when this specifically will be released, but when it is being recorded, we are in the midst of a lot of news, so every day is changing. But I'm excited to just connect, and this is someone who I've wanted to have on the pod for a while, so I'm glad I can talk to her. So I'm going to introduce my guest. She's super funny. We met at Cracked, and she's a great writer, comedian. I feel like we always run into each other at auditions pre-quarantine. Maggie Mae, what's up?
Hey, Teresa. It's great to see each other in person. Yeah, because Teresa and I are just talking. We're on a chat thread, which is great. But seeing people's faces, it just adds a whole nother. Warms my heart. Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like I jump into group chats, like I'll miss parts of it and then be in and out, and then I feel like sometimes I'm like, I sound insane. But I wanted to start just like with a good confession, which is really just like a humble brag or something positive you want to share, just to start on a positive note. God knows we need it now. Is there something good you want to confess?
Yeah, absolutely. And in the grand scheme of things, I know this is small. This is not, breaking news. But I learned how to paint my nails like really good, really good.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to show.
It's like glittery, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, I'm not even really into nails. I never used to get my nails done. Like I just kind of don't care about them, other than the fact that growing up I always had to have them short because I played a lot of sports. So now that I'm older, I'm like, I'm gonna grow out my nails. I'm gonna learn how to like paint my nails, give myself a manicure, and yeah, I did it. That's my brag.
That's great. It looks great. And
Thanks.
I mean, it feels like a small thing, but I think especially now, just like taking care of yourself and doing something extra. It's like taking care of yourself isn't just like being healthy, but sometimes it's like a little bit of pampering because, I think you gotta love yourself. Yeah. And then, it feels good. Sometimes when I'm stressed, I didn't even know I do this until I've been doing this more in quarantine, and then I was able to label it. But if I'm really stressed, I go and put on like makeup. And I didn't even realize I was doing this because in the wild, or whatever.
In the wild.
I would do it, but it's just like touching up. So I'd like go to the bathroom to touch up. But when I'm home, I know I'm not going anywhere. Nobody's seen me, and it's still something like I feel compulsion to do. So I think it has to do with like wanting to just like, okay, if I look like presentable, then I'll feel good.
Right. Then maybe I can bring myself to send an email, like if I do my eyebrows.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of that. It's also very like meditative, kind of like the routine.
Yeah.
That's how much I have to put on is like, I don't know what that says about being a woman, but I mean, not everything's all bad.
No.
Things are bad systemically, but within them, I have found comfort in the very tedious task of putting on makeup because there's so many steps to it. This is sort of loosely inspired by, like, this podcast, is loosely inspired by therapy because I started going later in life, and just to be able to, like, talk to people and feel heard was really therapeutic for me. Obviously, it's a comedic podcast, but I'm just curious what's your experience with therapy, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's not a loaded question.
Is my mom going to listen to this? Is this a test?
A lot of people I know, it's like half and half, I would say, on the pod. People either like had a similar experience where they're like, I love it, or some people were like, I never go, or some people were like, I went once and it wasn't for me. So it's good to hear. I like to just sort of get your experience with it.
Yeah, I went, the first time I ever went to therapy was pretty recently when I first moved to LA after college. Because I had been, back when I was 16, actually, I was diagnosed with not like severe depression, but I started taking antidepressant medication, and it was great. It worked amazing. My body like took to it right away, and that was great. But yeah, so my first encounter was when I moved to LA. Just I think being away from home and not knowing a lot of people. And that first encounter.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that was my first experience. I ended up with a therapist who was like a little stuffy and just kind of she wasn't helping me very much with like the problems I had in the moment. So then I did that and I was like, well, I don't know about therapy, and I kind of stopped that. But then a year after that, I decided to go again, and this time I got a great therapist. She was amazing. I actually went to it's out here in LA, but it's called the Chicago School of Psychology. Cool. They're students, and they do like a pay what you can. So yeah, like for if anyone is wanting to do therapy, but doesn't have the financial means, look around in your area and see if there are any students, because they need training hours. And I loved my therapist. She was amazing. She taught me so many skills that I still use to this day about myself and yeah, so
that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think that's it's also important for people to hear that it's not always a fit right away, because and I think a big problem I had when I first started was just how exhausting it is to find someone, and usually you're motivated to find someone when you're in the middle of a crisis, so then it's like so easy to give up, or just to feel like maybe this is a sign, depending on how far in the crisis you are.
Right.
But so now I like to like also share that side where it's like, it's not always good. And there are tons of bad therapists. Yeah, I know that. I think the system needs to be fixed, but I think it's good that I think going is like a sign that you're open to learning more about yourself, which is
and even if like a therapist isn't perfect, like you'll still learn a couple things, and I also think it'll help you probably find a therapist that will fit you better, like even just
that's true.
Just meeting to go and kind of see, because also and there's a lot of different therapies and a lot of different like philosophies behind. You might get someone that's a little more hippy dippy, so it's a little trial and error, but
Well, that's great. Well, that kind of brings me to ask you, Maggie, is there anything you would like to tell me?
Oh boy, Teresa, when you emailed me, I told you the thing that immediately
you had this ready to go.
I had it ready to go. So my confession, and I never talk about it, was that I was in a small hometown pageant my senior year of high school. Yeah.
Oh my God! What was it called?
It was the Miss Stevensville pageant.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you win?
So my year that I did it, apparently there was a scandal, which I don't know, because I don't. Scandal. I know, this is a small town scandal. It's so juicy. But apparently I had most of the points, but then the last look, apparently I went from first place to second runner up.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So there was some stacking of the votes.
Dang.
Well, I feel like I definitely want to hear more, but just for full transparency, I also did pageants.
Yeah.
And
that's really when you said you did it, I was like, all right, this is what we're talking about. Cause
I also don't talk about it much for obvious reasons. Look, a lot of the critiques about pageants in general are totally valid.
Yes.
I will say, like, it kind of actually weirdly goes back to the theme we were saying about, like, putting on makeup. Like, I can be aware that makeup in general is designed to oppress women, but also given the circumstances, I find the positive. So I would say that's how I feel about pageants too. Like, overall, a lot of critiques are correct, but what I got out of it, a lot of positives. But yes, also agree. The one I did was through the Miss America Scholarship pageant, and actually
Ooh.
has gone through a lot of reform, but I think in general it's still very outdated.
Yeah.
But I have mixed feelings because one of the Miss Americas and I ended up doing a pageant together, and she ended up going on to win Miss America.
Whoa.
But we talked a lot, and she's someone who I met through the pageant who I think does have a lot of positive values and is kind of spreading like what supposedly they say they're about, but really underneath it there's this whole weird underworld. But yeah, she was part of this movement to like fire the head of Miss America. There's a lot of weird stuff with Miss America. I wasn't involved in any of that. I did it as a teenager. I did the Miss Teen, you know, but yeah, pageants are wild. I'm so curious about your experience. So how did you want to do this? Did your parents push you into it? Like, how did you first come about this?
I will say, I think like when I was in high school, I had this like philosophy that was like, this will be the only time that I will like ever be in high school. So I kind of felt like I put pressure on myself to just kind of do everything. Like I said, like I played a lot of sports. I was in theater. I was a very overcommitted child. All of my own doing. Like my mom, she would be the one that's like, Maggie, you should just like stay home from school today. You know, like you do so much. You should just stay home. You know. But
Do you have siblings, or are you an only child?
I have an older brother.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, he was much more into like computers and a lot more much more of an introvert. Whereas I was like,
so you're saying a nerd?
Yeah, a nerd. As if I have room to talk. Yeah, my brother's a nerd. Yeah, so when you know the time to sign up for it came up, part of me was like, okay, listen, I know this is like this isn't what I'm into at all, really, at the time specifically. But it's like, this is my only time in my life I will ever get to do a pageant. You know, and I, you know, like none of my older cousins had done it, and I have a lot of older cousins, so it was like something that they'd never done. So yeah, I was like, why not? That's basically.
What was your parents' or mom's reaction when you told her you wanted to do it?
Oh, my mom she loved that. Absolutely, yeah. She second-handedly had a lot of fun that I was in a pageant. Yeah.
That's so interesting that you like it was all on your own, because I think, I mean, I do want to hear more about the experience and whether it's positive or not, or maybe it's mixed, but it's interesting because it feels like it came from this like seeking independence and also to try to be different than your cousins, where I feel like for some people their experience with pageants is that they're pushed into it and it's like all about being the same and conforming. So it's so interesting that for you it was like a way into feeling independent and different. I don't know if that resonates at all. Yeah,
well, I was also gonna say, I think like at least like for your and my age, at least, you know, like when we were growing up, you know, it was cool to like be a tomboy, like almost like rejecting, you know, certain parts. Yeah. And like you know, and I definitely, especially when I was like a younger child, like definitely adhered to that, you know, like called myself a tomboy, you know, like and so I think for us, like a lot of our younger years were kind of like teaching ourselves to reject that, you know, femininity. So I think going through like high school and kind of growing up a little bit is more like, at least for our generation, there was almost like a relearning of like, oh, okay, so it's not actually about like rejecting like, you know, feminist qualities. Like that isn't what independence looks like, and that's not the type of feminism that we should be, you know, practicing. So, yeah, part of the pageant, I think, was also part of, like, like reteaching myself to, you know, embrace parts of my femininity that earlier in my life I had just, you know, been like, you know, who needs it, you know? So.
That's so interesting. I've never heard it phrased that way, but I think you're totally right, and I didn't even realize that about myself. But there is, like, this rejection of it, but you are actually rejecting someone telling you what to do, like the patriarchy.
Right.
But you haven't like seen the whole picture yet, so you're like, oh, I'm just gonna reject girly things, and then
Right.
realizing like even the idea of labeling it girly is designed to separate us by gender. And then you're like, but I do like to feel like I want to dress up, I want this, and then you almost lean further into it.
Yeah.
That's so interesting because I never even connected that, but I was also a tomboy. In 4th grade I wore cargo jeans every day with XXL t-shirts and like cut my own hair like short shoulder length, and called myself a tomboy. And then went to high school and won a pageant. It's just like, what is going on? But okay. What is your area that you grew up in? Was it very like liberal or conservative or mixed?
Oh, it was very conservative. Yeah, it was a very conservative. Okay. Mostly a very like Catholic influence. A lot of like big families. My family is like an Irish Catholic, hence all of my cousins who had not done pageants. So yeah, it was conservative. However, I would say again, like most of the young people were, like I don't think anyone my age at the time was actually very religious. I went to a private Catholic school. Yeah, at the time it was kind of like, thanks for shoving this down our throats for years. That's great. So I think there was like a level of cynicism actually that kind of like, bonded kids my age. A lot of like, and also like, I think emo music was in at the time, so kind of like a strong counterculture reaction to the very like conservative reality of the small town.
Yeah, because that's around when MySpace was getting big, and MySpace was big with music too. I remember just like the idea of like scene and emo. I mean, I'm sure decades from now when they really can understand how to study the internet, that will factor into how the brewing, like whatever now they call it, the radical left, but a lot of that it wasn't really political, but a lot of that started with, I think, our generation being connected through music and like these sort of like angsty punk emo sounds.
What about
okay, so oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say I guess I'm curious, like, same about like your town. Like what made you decide to go into pageants?
Well, I mean, the direct answer is I danced, and my dance teacher was Miss Santa Clara, and she told us all about it. And to me, I was really looking forward to my whole life was been to prepare for college, and also I realized it was hard to pay for, so I was looking for scholarships. And they really market it as a scholarship pageant.
Yes.
And it is. If you really wanted to win, you have to spend way more than you win.
Yes.
So it is and it isn't. Like, it's not. I feel like a lot of people don't get into it for the scholarship. But on a local level, and local pageants are run differently, so you could have a really great local one. I did like how they ran it, and I liked my dance teacher, and she was like, anyone, you should all do this because you dance and you all have a good chance. So for me, I was just like, well, if I even do it with my friends, it'll be fun. You can perform, and maybe I'll win money. So that's what it was. But yeah, underlying, I'm sure there was also more to it, but that was the surface level. My town was super liberal, though. Like, I grew up in Palo Alto. Well, it's like pseudo-liberal. It's like,
yeah.
It's like liberal, wealthy. There's maybe some undertones of like classism for sure.
Right. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the scholarship was also like the number. Yeah, because I mean, probably the same. I mean, if you remember, like senior year is just like filling out as many scholarships as you can to be able to study anywhere. So yeah. Yeah,
there's some weird. Yeah, because there's some weird scholarships out there. Now I'm sure it's way more safe, but this was early in the internet where it's harder to fact check. And there are magazine articles about like, how I paid for college is just like starting freshman year by looking up scholarships. So I did a lot of that. And I remember even at one point, this has nothing to do with pageants, but I found some sort of like website that now I think was just a guy running maybe a Ponzi scheme. I don't know. But it was like scholarships. You can enter in every month to these contests. And
Uh-huh.
they were kind of like random, like picture contest, send a picture and whatever. And they're like quote unquote scholarships. But one year I got an email that was like, Halloween costume, send your sexy Halloween costume to win. And I was like, this is weird. So then I unsubscribed. But there's a lot of like stuff like that. I'm like, these are not. I think this is just a man collecting photos. Like,
oh my God.
I don't think this is.
Wow. That's basically
Honestly,
a
I'm like, yeah,
pageant.
wait, I wonder what happened to that. I'm like, yeah, maybe that guy, I hope that guy's in jail.
Whoa.
Yeah, I guess that is what a pageant. Yeah. So wait, okay, I want to hear more about your specific experience. So it sounded like, did you have a positive experience doing it?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's whenever groups of young women get together, it's always super fun. Like, it was very positive for the most part. The girl who won, she was great. She was like this super like quirky, like she was so weird that when she won, it was like great because she was very much herself. And she was great. Being on the court was like fun.
What was the experience of competing? Like, did you guys have to do like a talent and interview? I know the high school ones tend to be, sometimes they don't do swimsuit because I feel like what were the kind of areas you guys competed in?
Yeah, I think if I remember, it was, we had like a dress, like the dress. Mine was purple. I liked purple.
Did you buy a dress for the pageant?
I got a secondhand dress because I was trying to cut down for the scholarship. I was like,
yeah, the cost.
Yeah, they cost so much. So I got a secondhand dress that was a couple sizes too big that we had a friend tailor. So that's how we got it on discount. But yeah, I ended up loving it. We did an interview. Which I don't remember any of the questions they asked, but I'm sure it was about, like our career aspirations.
Was it on stage or separate? Because I know sometimes they have like a separate, like full on 20-minute interview.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they do an on-stage question.
That's how ours went. We had the interview. I remember feeling like the interview, at least to me, was like the most important part, probably because it,
Yes.
Yeah, because so I remember like, I really liked the suit that I think I also borrowed a suit. My particular chapter, they had a princess closet where they had extra like dresses and suits that people could borrow, which is great. And I think was
it part of a national, or do you know what the national organization was?
I don't know.
Miss America? No?
I think so. I think it was connected to the Michigan State pageant. So whatever.
There's a couple big ones. Like there's like Miss America. There's obviously Miss USA, but that's more modelly. That's the Trump one. And then there's like NAM, National American Miss. And then I'm sure there's a ton of little ones. But I was just curious because I'm like, oh, maybe we did this same one. That'd be crazy.
Oh man. Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember what the overall. I'm sure I still follow them on Facebook though from back in the day.
What was so you kind of came into this thinking you were an outsider, and then did you feel like you got there and you're like, this is my people, or were you like, I'm gonna like, how did it feel when you first got there and like kind of met everyone?
Of some of the people I knew, but I didn't go to school with any of them, so that was different and fun because the actual pageant took place at the larger public high school that was next to my house. So yeah, I mean it was everyone was very unique. It was a very, very unique mix of people. I would say if we're, like going to stereotype the cast, I guess I was more like the artsy pick, like the artsy gal. There was a girl named Patricia who was, going to be a teacher, and she was great on stage. She just had like a huge smile. She ended up winning Miss Congeniality. There was this tall, mean girl, and she was the only like, actual like, mean girl. And even she was like, pretty nice as far as like mean girls go. She just wanted to win really bad and was really tall and, looked like a model.
How many people competed? Was it a big pageant?
I think there must have been 15.
Okay, that's pretty
Yeah.
big.
It's pretty big, yeah. But like everyone was not like another girl, I used to play soccer with, that later in life I realized that I had a crush on her, but didn't know at the time.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I feel like we have such similar stories. I love that though, when you find out someone you already are friends with and you didn't know all that about, you're like, oh, we vibe, and you're like, whoa, like,
yeah, whoa.
very specific similar stories. That's wild. Okay, I don't know. So I did know you were going to talk about pageants, but I didn't know any stories about it. So, do you want to? Are there anything specific you want to share about it, or I can keep asking questions, but I don't want to like feel like I'm leading because I don't know. Like, if there's anything specific from your experience or a story you want to share from it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say all the girls who did it were the positive part of it. Like, like I said, like hanging out with them was great. And like, and actually the girl who won ended up becoming friends with, it's a small town. So like ended up marrying someone that I used to work with at my hometown, Jimmy John's, who like I was close with. So, like,
whoa.
Yeah, all the girls were great. I would say the people who ran the pageant, like to this day, I don't know, a lot of the actual like structure of it, I think was weird and like wigged me out in a way.
I never thought about it that way. That's true. The people, these adults who run these teenage pageants, very invested in it, and it's their entire life. Mm-hmm. What's going on there?
Yeah. I so in a specific moment, so I remember one of the ladies who was running it, she, took me to the princess closet to get, to borrow a suit because, I, at the time, like I simultaneously didn't want to pay for one and also like, couldn't pay for one. And I remember her, taking me to the princess closet and her just like slightly, it's like trying to coach me basically for like the interview that had been coming up. And I remember thinking like, one, like I kind of don't care. Like I, didn't want her advice. And I was like, I can do an interview. Like that's a thing I was excited to do. And I cared a lot about it. So, and I thought it was weird. She was like trying to coach me. And when we were in the dress closet, I remember seeing a blue suit and I liked it. I was like, oh, okay. I'm going to pick that one. And she didn't let me take that one. She made me take a pink suit that I didn't like. And the whole thing ended up feeling like she was getting me alone to like talk to me about the pageant.
Whoa, it's almost like very metaphorical.
Yeah.
She wouldn't let you wear a blue suit.
Yeah.
There's so many layers to this that as an adult you're like, oh shit, but you don't even notice how like, and calling it a princess closet, like there's a lot going on there. Wow. What was did she coach you on like topics, like opinions to have in this interview?
No, I mean, but that's the other thing. It's like her advice was so like archaic. Like it really felt like, like an old school like pageant person and also at the time, like I didn't even really care about what, like I didn't think, like I wasn't planning to place it all really. And it was just like, ma'am, like this is the wrong audience. Like I don't, I'm literally here just to get my suit. And that wasn't the only time. There was another girl who at the time she was openly gay and she was in the pageant. And I remember us all hanging out and her basically being like, I kind of don't know why I'm here because I, like the judges, don't even really like pay attention to me. And like, we would do rehearsals and it was very clear like who they, thought was like.
They wanted to be.
Yeah. And like, all us girls like didn't care and like basically as vocally as we could like rejected the things like that were happening. Like I said, the girl that won is the chillest and like she was also very vocal about this being very like stupid, quite frankly, and especially for the adults. Like it was supposed to be something for us, and for I think the most part it was really fun, and like and we did, all of us did get along, and I hopefully like I don't think anyone felt very it didn't feel very cliquey at the time, even with, the quote-unquote, like, mean girl who was tall and pretty.
Yeah.
Like, she never went out of her way to ostracize anyone.
But that's interesting that you talk about that, because I didn't even connect it, but it starts on such a local level. Like, it's your friends, it's just fun, and you kind of can ignore or normalize some of the weirdness because you're like, whatever.
Yeah,
but that funnels into state, and then it funnels into this whole culture, which, like, if you, come in and out of it, then it's, that's it, and you just have a brush with it. But then some people who are fascinated can then get sucked in and then really, like, become in this echo chamber of thought. Because, if you realize you're different and you're willing to put up with it, you might just end up silencing that part of yourself and continuing down the road. It makes it really hard to just have this like open discussion.
Yeah.
Because there's literally a winner, and you know that they're trying to control the narrative of like who's the best and blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And just the fact, like, it feels almost like, predatory is a strong word. But, like, and again, being, like, I was, like, a white teenager, having, like, an older, like, white woman just, like, take you into, like, a princess dressing room where, like, you're just honestly trying to get a suit because you can't afford one. And she's, like, trying to, like, it's weird and, like, and just, like, thinking of, like, that small instance and thinking of, like, the larger ramifications of that is like, so that part of it is
they're kind of dangling something that the high school girls would want, which is to be accepted, to be part of a group, to even feel like pretty, and because these are things that we're told, like, if you get attention for looking good, it's good. They use I didn't even connect it until you said that, but they're using that to kind of like espouse their ideas. Not everyone. This sounds so like tinfoil hat, and I don't mean all of them, but I mean at a basic level. If the goal is just to have fun, then it shouldn't be that serious, right? But if they're really taking it that serious, it makes me think like, well, maybe the whole system's designed to kind of, it's not full-on manipulation. It's not like one person sitting behind the curtains, but there's a little bit of manipulation. Like, oh, this is fun. I like to dress up. I like to feel pretty. Oh, some opinions do better than others. Okay, well, maybe I shouldn't talk about this part. Maybe I shouldn't talk about my sexuality, blah, 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 Damn.
Yeah.
What did you do for your talent?
So we didn't have a talent portion, but one thing that I did really like, and I'm glad that this was part of it, was where we had to have like a platform where we had to talk about. Oh yeah. Yeah. So I did blood donating. I was like an advocate for donating blood. I had run a couple blood drives, and also I at the time was anemic, so giving blood was something I couldn't do sometimes, but so yeah, that was my I partnered with the local blood donating center, and they were like co-sponsors on my platform. So that part was very cool, and it and suggesting that we actually reach out to like an organization and actually I had to I got to have like a meeting with them, and that was all like really cool. And I think that is a very positive thing, especially for young women, to be like, oh yeah, like how do I something that I care about, how do I craft like a speech that would sway other people to do something good for the community. So that part was fun. Yeah,
that's really great. I mean, yeah, because when you talk about the interview, that also, and I'm assuming we're gonna find more similarities as we talk, but that also was what drew me, because I was so college prep oriented, and because I was in a liberal area. Even though within liberal areas there's like conservative groups, I would say the pageant people were more conservative, but I wasn't like brainwashed by them or anything. Yeah. So when I went in, I thought this would be a good way to practice interview skills because of college interviews. And I would say it did actually really help in that regards, because by the time I was interviewing for like internships and jobs in college, like it felt like there was this like very strong foundation from doing pageants.
Yeah.
And just being comfortable on stage. Like, honestly, the shit that they asked us on stage were like probably way too broad questions for high school kids, but we really thought we knew everything and tried to answer.
Yeah.
They would ask, like what do you think about the war? Do you believe in like euthanization? Like crazy stuff, hot topic identity issues, or what's like identity politics. But you have to answer in like 3 minutes on stage in a evening gown. It's so wild.
Do you remember what question you got? I don't think I do, but
well, I've done a couple. So I did the first year I did it. I won talent, and it was enough because I made a little bit of money on it that I was like, oh, let me do it again the next year. And then the next year I won. So then I went to state. And when you win a local, they do care more because you're going to represent them. So then they had me do coaching. And then that's when I started seeing a little bit more of like what it is beyond just the scholarship.
Right.
There's a lot of sort of, I don't know. Yeah, pageantry, literally.
Yeah.
But kind of like you're the mascot for what they want you to say. And sometimes it's okay if you're from a nice area, and sometimes it's very conservative. But yeah, I do remember the question I got at state, because that's like actually very relevant right now, is they asked me what are, I don't remember the exact wording, but basically like, what do you think about racial profiling?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And I was like a 16-year-old in this like amphitheater, and I already knew my opinion was like it's bad.
Right.
But I like what I said. I think I said something about like I called it racial slurs on accident, but I said like it's bad. We should be judging people based on who they are. Like something very generic, because you get only like 1 minute. But it's funny that you asked that, because I was like, I recently was thinking about how long ago they had high school kids talking about this, and yet it was such a blanket, like answer this on stage and then wave your hand and walk off.
Right.
And I didn't even know, like, how can I be active? I had no idea that I could actually go out and be active and access like more change versus just standing on a stage and saying like, I think we shouldn't be racist.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the one I remember clearly, because I remember coming off and people being like, oh, that was great, but then I was like, I think I said racial slur instead of, and they're like, we knew what you meant.
Oh, okay.
And I remember just being like, oh no.
Right. Oh, bye. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you still talk to any of the girls that you met?
It is like everyone is so like, there was one girl who like ended up going to like Ole Miss, and like and her life just seems like it went like off the rails. But then like
wait, what do you mean off the rails?
I mean, just like I am fairly certain that she is racist, and like is just like
I see. Gotcha.
dug her, so. But like another woman, became a doctor, and like she's great, and she like lives in Detroit. Another woman is she's out now, and she wasn't out when we did the pageant together.
That's awesome.
Which is great. And she.
When did you or realize you were? Or did you like? When did you come out, or were you like realized to yourself?
It was in college when I first like started actually dating women. And I think it wasn't until college that I even like realized that feelings that I had were romantic. Yeah I'm
similar, because I think being both into men and women, like, and if you feel strongly about a man or boy, I guess is what they were called at the time,
boy.
This is clear feeling, and then you can easily write off everything else as like, oh, I think I just was weirdly fascinated, or sometimes I'd be like, I'm just really jealous of that girl,
right?
Like,
or it's
so
like
jealous, just wanna sleep in her arms.
Yeah, or even just like being like really good friends to the point where like in another part of my life, like I would have pursued it to be more, but just didn't have the that weird thing.
Well, you kind of, there's these invisible walls you don't even realize are there, so you're not even gonna cross it. That's so interesting. I wonder, I'm so curious now, like I wonder how many queer women as adults actually had, especially like bisexual or you know into both men and women and in between have actually had those swings from like being very tomboy to super almost like conservatively feminist or feminine. I feel like it might not be that uncommon, even though it seems like a wild swing. So it makes sense. You're trying to explore these different sides of yourself.
Yeah.
And then there's like these acceptable ways to explore it. And then so you're like, well, this is very safe if I do this pageant. I can broadcast to the world. But then at the same time, you're like, something's different here.
Yeah. It's almost like, well, especially, you know, as, you know, in that time in our life, we're still kind of trying to form like how we want to present to the world and like, and we're still kind of figuring out, like, I mean, basically our gender expression, like what, you know, what we want to, how we want to express, like, and we're still basically, we're still trying to figure out what is inside of us at that time. So it's kind of like, you know, a lot of like trial and error and putting on different hats to see, you know, just to rebel in some way, but also to, you know, you find what speaks true to you. Yeah.
Is there anything that you think people don't know about pageants or misconception that you learned that you would be like, oh, here's what my experience is?
Yeah, I mean, I was, for the most part, I think when people talk about pageants, like we say, like they bring up the negative parts, which is such a part of it that, you know, you kind of have to, and it's so ingrained into the like structure of it that to talk about it without criticizing it, you know, that I understand. However, like on the individual level, I will say for the most part, and especially like in small town pageants, it's usually just like, you know, women who like are, you know, from the gamut of like bored to like want scholarship money to like, you know, is it out queer woman who, you know, just wants to be in the pageant to show that, you know, to, you know, like the girl who won, who was just like, again, like so sweet and weird that she's just great. And like, I'm so glad she did the pageant because, you know, I got to meet her. So,
but you said like you were winning and then you went to the second round up. So it almost seems like maybe they actively the judges, because the judges have a lot to do with who actually wins. Like even if you have scores, they end up deliberating. So that, do you think that there was like not a conspiracy, but do you think they actively were like, well, we don't think she should be the winner, and why would you think that? Like, was it just that your opinions are too strong, or it is like a conspiracy theory, and the only reason that I know this is because my best friend is actually, she's 3 years younger than me and went to that high school, went to the public high school, and when I was in college, her name's Molly, she texted me and she was like, hey, did you know that your season of Little Miss Stevens, or like your year of Little Miss Stevensville, was the only year that they switched up the judging the judging totals, and I was like, whoa. And then I was like trying to think if I did anything to like, you know, to make it when you're mad. And the only thing I can really think was that I kind of projected that I wasn't really into it at times. Like I did make it very clear that I was there mostly for scholarship. Like I did not care about the, you know, politics like really at all. I wanted to win for the money, but I didn't want to win to be, you know, like that really wasn't a goal of mine. Did you cry, or did the winner cry when she was crowned?
Yeah.
Wow. That's so funny. It's such a like cliche visual, but I think it's also very overwhelming too if you're so nervous, and then just the relief. I didn't cry when I got crowned, but I remember it hurt to smile. Like I couldn't. I had to do like a walk, and I couldn't. Like my mouth was like quivering. And then I was like, I need to like look more grateful, but I was just focused on,
look more grateful.
Keep smiling.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm glad that she ended up winning, because again, and again, I went to, the small, like, private school, so like I had some friends there, but it was her school that the pageant was taking place at, so she had all of her like peers cheering for her, and yeah, so like at the end of the day, like, no ill will, but I do think it's really funny, and I do wonder, for
sure. I mean, you are probably correct. Like, whenever there's smoke, there's fire. It doesn't mean it's like a big conspiracy, but it could be as simple as like, well, she might drop or this or that, and also you would have to pay more to continue on.
Yes.
So like,
yes.
like, oh, do we think she's down to put down money? That's crazy. There's definitely an underbelly world or underworld to pageants, especially in adult pageants, where I don't know if you know about this, but there's like message boards that used to like very catty. A lot of it, I think, were actual contestants going on to bash each other, but they'd be like, I heard so and so did this, or like leak, scandalous items about each other. And because I did it in college, I ended up doing the Miss Brooklyn and Miss Manhattan. It didn't win, but I got court on Miss Brooklyn. That's when I met the Miss America. But that's when I learned about that, because that's like you're thrown into the wild. It's like the city and it's adults. And some of these girls did it since childhood. And so when I saw those boards, I was like, this is the toxic world that I do. Like, I was like, bye, peace. And that to me is enough to be like, okay, yes, these positive things are great. But if you really get stuck in this world, it's like so toxic.
Yeah. And like, yeah, so I like, not to be like there, I don't know if there's any takeaway lesson, but like yeah, like, expressing your femininity like does not need to be toxic whatsoever. Like, it is not inherently toxic. And I think a lot of people try to make that connection of like, oh, like pageants are hyper feminine and that's why they're really toxic, because like women are catty. And it's like, no, actually they're kind of upholding patriarchy in a way. They are pitting women against each other because they are trying to compare looks and stuff. So it's not that femininity in itself is toxic whatsoever.
Right.
And like, I hope women feel encouraged to explore their femininity and not feel like, they need to hide it in any sort of way. But it's definitely
that's a great way of putting it. Yeah. Because you kind of make a good point, and maybe coming from the outside opens that perspective. But the idea is like, seems like you have a very strong sense of self that you discovered through being open to things that felt different from you, and then that helped you define like what you believe in and who you are, and where your place is in the world. But if you start by staying in one world, then it becomes really hard to develop a real sense of self. So yeah, I think the key isn't to just say this is bad, this is good, this is bad, but to be open to things that feel just a little outside of you, but they're interesting, like you're obviously drawn to it. And then through that experience, you actually can become stronger in your sense of self.
That's that's a great summary. You've summed it up great.
Well, I like to end with a game. I originally had a different one, but I actually kind of want to do, this is more of a simple one, but it's kind of more I thought of this as we're talking. I think this might be a fun way to end, since we're talking about pageants. But okay, knowing what you know now and having gone through the experience, and let's say you were running a pageant, what categories, let's say, okay, let's go with 3 to 5 categories. What would be the categories that you would want to be in this pageant? Like, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be visual or wardrobe related, but what would be the judging criteria in your pageant? Oh,
great. Well, okay, instead of ball gowns, because for most pageants, ball gowns are required. So I would call it personal style. So that if you want to wear a suit, you can wear a suit. If you want to wear so people have a wider range, because it's like I did love I wore like a big poofy ball gown, and that was like that was great, but I there were girls in the pageants that looked at the variety of dresses and like were like, oh great, like this is what I have to go on stage for. So yeah, I would say dress is not required, personal style category. I would say, I liked doing the platform, but again, it felt very like presentational. I feel like the princesses should probably be a little more involved with, what their platform is. So yeah, have to do certain volunteer hours, and then, present us, on stage what, you learned from, the, whatever activity you wanted to volunteer for.
Oh, that's cool. Like almost like a service hours component to it.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like, I loved, interviewing the people at the blood center, but it's like I didn't have to donate blood to like go on stage to talk about it.
Right. True.
Just to encourage women to get, go a little more involved, with volunteering. I would do a physical strength category, which
fun.
I don't think it needs to be a huge part of the overall score, but yeah, let's what do you do for yourself, to keep yourself healthy, maybe a mental
that's
health.
nice because
Oh no, go for it. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say I really like the phrasing of physical strength versus like because I guess what they do now is like swimsuit is kind of the equivalent, but it's so superficial. But physical strength is very empowering. It feels so much heavier, and it's like your strength, and it doesn't have to be lifting weights. Like, what is your strength?
Right.
Like as a woman.
Yeah, what
that's
is
really
it?
Cool. I like that phrasing.
Yeah, like even if it's just like a difficult yoga pose, like that would impress me.
Yeah.
Like I can't do that. And I would love to. Yeah, I think that'd be fun. Maybe a mental health section where, either people can talk about like their struggles, or, what they're doing to shed light, on mental health struggles for teenage girls specifically. That's
awesome.
Are there any coming to your mind? That was
this is great. I mean, I said 3 to 5 because I was like, there's no right or wrong answer. So you have personal style, service hours, or like a service component.
Yeah. Or
physical strength, mental health.
The other thing I would add is maybe some sort of like history component, or some sort of because technically, hopefully, the end result of a pageant, and I think you see that with your friend, like she becomes a spokesperson for like change, or pushing certain social justice aspects. So yeah, anywhere within the pageant that they can help foster that, I think is important. Yeah. And as part of, young women learning to like speak up for themselves, it's like, oh yeah, like what causes do I care about? What change do I actually want to see in the world? Yeah.
I love that. Okay. The Miss Maggie Mae Fish pageant. I'm on board.
Great.
I would sign my kid up for this. Thank you so much for talking to me about this, and I feel like I learned a lot about you. And is there anything you want to plug, or where can people follow you? And, out there.
You guys can follow me on Twitter at Maggie Mae Fish, just my name, on Twitter. You can watch my film analysis videos on YouTube, which again is just my name. You can search it on YouTube. I'll pop up. And then also Adam Ganzer, also from Cracked. We have a podcast on the Small Beans Network called I'll Show You Mine If You Show Me Yours, where we compare like our road trip CD, or our Is This a Date movie, and we compare and discuss.
Oh, fun.
So yeah.
Oh, nice. Oh yeah, I gotta get Adam on this sometime. Cool. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah, and you guys can follow this podcast at Tell Me Anything Pod, and follow me at Larissa T. Until next time, bye.